Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a brand new series, a reimagining of an old series from a couple of years ago when we built Lost in the Depths, and then later on, the map you can see behind me, Into the Depths. Now, both of these maps are what you would call a Complete the Monument map. The initial maps were designed by Vex himself, and obviously inspired by a lot of other people who designed them, things like Ragecraft 3, other things like that. Now, obviously, those are PC maps. Now, I wanted to build mine on the console because at the time, I never had a decent PC, and I felt like I was missing out on some really challenging parts of Minecraft. So, this is where these first two maps came into the place. Obviously, we're looking around here at Into the Depths. We've got obviously the loading area here with the standard rules of a CTM map. Nothing really changed from then. So, this map, the problems I had with this one, before we even move on to looking at and developing a brand new map, you first gotta kind of review what you've already done, and you kind of got to understand what went well, what didn't go well, because otherwise, if you make a brand new map, you'll end up making the same mistakes. Like example, for the first thing, without even moving my camera, I can see a couple of mistakes here. Like, first of all, one, there is like no initial complete structure to this area. There's no pathing, there's no like directive way, besides the fact that you fall out of a waterfall. Now, obviously, it's nice that there are boats and all, but walking on a one wide gap round the outside is no use. The custom trees are something that is a positive from this area, and then the other negative is random chests in water, a random chest on the back over there, and then huge lighting errors. Now that's the big problem. I was kind of neglecting to notice it, but we don't want to be having the repeats of this sort of area. Like, we shouldn't have really been having sort of things like this. I do like my text that we have in the start of these areas, and that one is missing a glowstone. I think that's because they couldn't put one on the middle pillar. And this was a last minute addition to it, so there's nothing really changed here. I'm going to do a bit of couple cuts here. We're going to jump around the map a little bit because this is the first wall, obviously. It's the only outdoor area on the map. Now that's another thing, is not using the full potential of the map. Now if we get a map out here, let's get to it in my hand. Where is it? I can't see. I'm going through my hand and it's not moving. There it is. Okay, so as you will notice, if we just climb over all this, everything disappears, but we're only at Y100. It's really not very high, and we've got 256 worth of blocks in this map to sort it out. A little bit of a mishap there, but we finally managed to hit the monument and skip a couple through the first couple of intersections. Well, intersection 2 is just under the water over there, but that's not the point. This area has its ups and its downs. It's probably one of my favorite areas on the map. The fact that it uses more than just one structure, and you can't really tell what I've done in the area. The issues with this one, obviously, is there are giant gaping holes with no natural pathways in another area. Bit of a lackluster on the building part of it, and there is, again, no structure. This is okay. The monument's fine. And then intersection 2 is probably the personal favourite intersection on the map. I do like the first one, but intersection 2, just how it came and it turned out after all, was probably my favourite. This is where the map starts to go downhill, in my personal opinion. It feels, beyond these areas, I feel like it was rushed. Like the area for the snow wall, I feel like was wrong. I feel like the nether wall here didn't have enough structure, it just went too high. The only positive I have is the yellow wall, but it doesn't flow very well. Now, I know I'm being very negative on myself here because I've had over 2 years to think about this, but back a couple years ago when I was just first using MC Edit, I obviously thought these were really good. Now, obviously, my tastes have changed a little bit since then, and I find things, well, they don't quite work as they used to. So I'm just going to fly back across into the area over here because I wanted to kind of move on from this map very quickly. Now, great that Lost in the Depths had a huge jump to Into the Depths, because obviously Lost in the Depths, if you guys remember, was the creative mode map we built. Obviously, we modded in the spawners and things like that, but we had to bedrock the outside of it. Each area took like 5 minutes to complete. It was ridiculously quick and easy map to do. But yeah, the problems with these maps is, I'll probably list them on the screen for you guys, is lack of structure. Now, obviously, great, they're very linear maps, but there's a lack of structure across them all, and there is no flow from one wall to the next. It's kind of just, here's an area, beat it. Here's the next area, beat it. Things like that. Now, obviously, the depth of the map, obviously, like the signage and things like that, that's what was good in Lost in the Depths. It was the map maker tormenting the player. Now, Into the Depths, I feel like didn't have that, because obviously the time scaling, we wanted to release it on the same day as the year before, as Lost in the Depths had been. We kind of rushed the ending a lot. Like, I know I've already said that, but it meant that there wasn't that interaction between the two maps, and you could kind of tell that because it felt like more of just an area rather than a world that had been written around you, if you know what I mean. Sorry, because I'm kind of trying to base it and explain how things are going to change as well at the same time. I know this is a little bit of a ramble. Plus, the other thing is, I felt like this map kind of didn't have the right scaling. Like, it was too easy from the start, and then all of a sudden you hit black, which is the final wall on the map, which has never been shown on the channel, which it probably never will because I didn't record that part of the map. Essentially, it becomes a run. You literally just have to run. And then the wall ends up being in the ceiling, which means you just pillar up to it because that was inspired by Uncharted Territories number 3. But then that one has barrier blocks that stop people cheating, and ours didn't, and it wasn't tough enough to get people to kind of dig their way there. So I think length is the other issue with the map, is some areas are too short. Like, for example, I could do this wall in probably 2 or 3 minutes because I know where the shortcuts is, and this map, this area here, would still take me 20-25 minutes to speed run through it, just because of the fact of, I know where everything is, that's great, but it's the length of the area. Now, if only we had spectator mode on this version, I could show you the length comparison differences, because that one is a couple caves that loop around. This one is 3 distinct sections. You've got a little bit of a corridor area at the start, you've got these library rooms, and then you've got the main lava temple area, which takes a hell of a long time to complete in itself. Difficulty is the last thing I wanted to kind of pick up on, obviously. Now, obviously, it's going to have some more story-based stuff, so it'll kind of, hopefully, it will engulf the player into when playing this map. But, yeah, these two maps, they were great for working it out, but I'm really wishing I'd put more thought into them, because these maps could have probably been 10 to 15 times better, especially this map, Into the Depths, the one that was first used MC Edit. Now, obviously, if you've seen PC maps, you can obviously make the comparison yourself as to what the quality and standard of a CTM-style map should be. So, we're going to switch over to MC Edit now, because that's where the first sort of area I want to kind of start explaining this brand new map. I just wanted to first kind of go over Into the Depths and Lost in the Depths and say my little bit of a thought / developer commentary review sort of on the maps, what went wrong, what went right. I'm not going to get into too much detail. If you guys want that, I'll do a separate video for that, but that's fine. But yeah, so let's switch over to MC Edit, and I will see you guys in just a second. Okay, so we've switched over to MC Edit now. Now you're probably wondering what you're looking at here, because it's supposed to be the start of a series and not the middle of one. Well, these are, essentially, this is my test world for what I was doing last year when I was trying to start this map, essentially. But then I kind of had change of thoughts and changed my mind. Like, originally, if you guys have seen some of the stereo, trying to look for the word for it, but essentially the pictures from last year, and I did a teaser for this as well, but I think that video got privatized. But essentially, the problems I have with this is it's too much going on. This world was also stripped back from another one, which I think I've got on here as well. But you guys may recognize the pictures from this area over here, which if we get over here, we can have a look for ourselves, which is probably the latest thing I did probably beginning of this year when I said that I was starting on a CTM map again. Well, this was another thing that I came up with. Obviously, it's a lot simpler. It's got houses with basically straight walls. It's all sorts of things like that. Now, I'm just going to use this because it's an easy background picture for me to use while I'm talking to you guys. Let's kind of let that load up in the background. But essentially, there's a lot more going on with this map than I initially thought there was going to be. I'm also kind of paying attention to my Xbox board in the background because it's starting to crash, but that's fine. So, the first major talking point I think I need to mention is that this map will not be a standard CTM map. It will not be a Complete the Monument map. Now, in the next episode, we're going to have a look at some different games, looking at inspiration-based stuff for how you can structure the gameplay of a map. Because obviously, you don't have to necessarily set your maps up for like 16 standard wool with one objective per wool. For example, the current working title, I don't know if you guys can see it or not, but it was Rise from the Depths. I've also had historians on this, Museum of Natural History, things like that. I've also had a lot on this, but I think I'm going to stick with one of them eventually. But for now, working title is going to be Rise from the Depths. But the story behind the world is very different. It's kind of going to hopefully link up the 3 maps in one go, but that's pretty tough because I've got very little to actually start me off on in the first 2 worlds. Hopefully the third one will link everything together. Now, obviously, before you start even building anything on MC Edit, which I have made the mistake already, because I actually have started doing something, so let me grab my mouse here. Let's go to our menu and we will quick load something up. We were going to load up this one. There, it's at the top. I'm just being stupid. Because this is one that I built basically last week because I wanted to try and start working on an initial zone. But the initial zone, I've come up with a better idea of how I'm going to do this now. Let's let it load in because it isn't that much. This is all it is. It's really not that much at all. But it has stone brick, andesite, polished andesite, and gravel in the walls. So obviously there's no stone. Tried it with sand as well. I know I've got a... So essentially, it was going to be the spawn area, but I've changed my mind again. This is really a bad habit of mine, starting things and then not carrying them on. But this world here will be used. But what we're going to do in a couple of episodes' time, we're going to find ourselves a decently sized piece of naturally generated Minecraft terrain, and we're going to get this thing blended into it. Because what I want to do with the very top of the world, like probably the top 50 blocks, so say we want to have multiple layers in this area, obviously, so we're trying to think of each world will probably have no more than a 50 block height limit, so which means we can stack stuff on top of each other, which gives us plenty of working space to build each world. So, we've also come up with a different way of sorting out intersections this time, because the world will not have intersections. It's going to have 15, that's right, 15, not 16 distinct areas, because when you explore through the nether, which the nether is going to be slightly different because each nether portal you take will take you to a new area. So essentially the entire nether is going to be this museum. It's going to be more than just a museum. It's going to be more like... There's a couple games that I'm trying to think of, but I think we'll go through one episode where we'll flip between a couple games and try and get some inspirational things on the board, because that's one of the things you want to do. You want to get yourself an inspiration board, essentially get pictures, games, and have a look at what you want to look at. But essentially, the game I'm thinking of here, for sort of the museum style, is the outer areas on, well, I can't remember the game's title. It's one in the recent Dark Knight trilogy games. I think the Batman stuff. Well, essentially, it's the Arkham games, anyway. But I've got an image in my head of what it used to be. Like, there was multiple separate buildings. I think it might be the first one. And then there's this big outside section. Obviously, it won't be nether. We're going to change it up completely. We're going to make it such a big, large, expansive area. And then we're also going to create something based on a different style of gameplay, which is from a very Xbox classic game. It's a children's game. I know I've mentioned this before, but it doesn't matter if it's a children's game or not. The structure is what I'm looking for. And essentially, in this game, which we will show next time, there's this sort of, every time you go into a level, each level requires a certain amount of previous items to unlock the next levels. So obviously during each world you'll kind of have to do more than run to the end and grab the congrats, you completed this section award sort of thing. But it means you'll have to go back when you've got later better gear if it's too tough in an area for you. It means we can make areas much more difficult. Now obviously the screen is not really much to look at, and I do apologize for that because it's kind of one of those things that we're going to look at in the future. But I want to wrap this up here because I've got an idea for episode 2 next week, and I don't really want to start going into it because it gives me another week's time to kind of consolidate my storyboard a little bit more, because I've got a good amount at the start, but I really don't have much more than that, and I want to kind of give it you guys not in dribs and drabs, but I want to give you a bit more development to it, because then I can kind of show you my working progress. And if you guys have got any suggestions, then that's perfect, because it means that we can look into stuff. And maybe on in the future, if this gets enough popularity, we might do a thread for linking to building designs and stuff like that, because each area will need an area, like stuff like that. Because we're looking at the moment, each area is probably going to be 430 blocks by 430 blocks. It's not a lot to work with, especially because the block height limit won't be that much, but it gives us more than what we've had on most of our other maps. So, here's what I want you guys to do. Just let me know in the comments below the feedback you guys have been suggesting. Like, what did you find that was good? What did you find that was wrong? Where can we take this further? And have you got any story ideas? Because I have got an idea in my mind, but if you guys give feedback and stuff, it'll allow me to understand stuff better, and it means that we can work on this as sort of a group, more than just on myself. Hopefully we will get more done for next episode. We'll be able to show some actual progress. But thank you guys very much for watching this episode 1 of our map building. I think I'm going to call it a map building because it's not a CTM map. But thank you guys very much for watching, as I've just said it twice now. And I will see you all again in the next one. Bye bye.